I'm Helen Campbell, and in this video I'm going to show you how to paint this delicious caramel dessert complete with glossy cherries. To begin with, I taped down my watercolour paper onto my watercolour board and sketched out a really simple line drawing like this, and I'll show you how I traced down my drawings on the card on the screen right now. I carefully look at my colour chart to select the colours that I'm going to use. The initial colours I've chosen are Davys Grey, Paynes Grey, Burnt Umber, Burnt Sienna, Cadmium Scarlet and Piemonte Genuine. To begin with, I mix a watery mix of Cadmium Scarlet and apply it to the cherry at the top as shown, avoiding the little highlight that I've penciled in. Once I've applied the paint, I clean my brush in water, pat it on the kitchen roll so that it's just damp, and blend the paint into the paper like this. With the base of the cherries in place, I look at my colour chart and carefully choose my next colour, which is a watery mix of Burnt Umber and Burnt Sienna. I'm applying this all over the trifle as shown, but avoiding the very subtle highlight on the right hand side like this. I'm also using the tip of my brush to work around the cream at the top. The paper that I'm using today is Arches, and it's a cold press paper at 300 GSM, and the brushes are size 0, size 3, size 6 spotters and a number 2 flat, and I will put all the tools and equipment that I use in the description box below. Today I'm using a very limited palette for this food illustration, just so that you can join in yourselves if you want to. Here you can see me using a number 2 side flat brush to just blend the colours together and lift a little bit of the colour out. I've decided to add Windsor Red to the equation because I felt that the Cadmium Scarlet on its own was a little too orange, and this gives it a little bit of depth. I apply this over the dry colour, avoiding the highlight as before. Just using the brush to blend it in, making sure that I avoid the chocolate sprinkles on the top. Lifting out the highlight a little more with the flat synthetic brush. Applying the same colour to the cherry on the bottom. Here you can see me with 2 puddles of Piemonte Genuine. A really watery mix and a slightly thicker one. I'm applying the really watery mix to the base of these chocolate sprinkles on the top of the cream. Once this colour is partially dry, I drop in the thicker mix to give it more form and a little bit of shape. I'm not being too careful at this point, I'm just dropping in the colour where I feel it will just look naturally correct, using the tip of my number 0 sized brush. I have a mix of Davys Grey just to add to some of the folds within the cream to make it look really natural. This mix has to be really watery because we don't want the cream on the top to look grey. I also have a mixture of Davys Grey on the base here to give a little bit of a shadow to begin with on the bottom of the jar of the trifle, and I'm also adding a little bit of Piemonte Genuine to this to take some of the greyness out. When this is slightly dry, I'm dropping in a watery mix of Paynes Grey to enhance the shadow, which we will build up a bit later. You can see how the water is making the paint blur into itself, giving this really soft, focused look. Just using the flat brush to lift out a slight error. I'm using the Piemonte Genuine to add some form to the cherry on the top here. I'm blending it in. It makes it look three-dimensional, and I'm also adding a little bit to the stalk. And I repeat the process on the bottom cherry. Always make sure that you blend your colours together. I'm adding another colour to the equation here, and I'm choosing Indian Yellow. I mix it with a little bit of burnt umber and burnt sienna, and I'm applying it to the caramel at the top. Also working down the side of the jar like this, again blending the colour into the existing wash. Here I have a watery mix of the two, and I'm using it where the colour seems to fade on the outside of the jar and also to the base here. Once again, working around the highlight on the sort of middle right hand side of the jar as shown. Using burnt sienna to enhance here and there where I feel the colours needed a bit more strength. I'm also working around the drizzles of caramel sauce on the jar, as you can see, using burnt sienna with a tiny bit of Piemonte Genuine where I felt it was needed. Again painting in the drizzles of the sauce dripping down the side of the jar. I'm just dipping in and out the colours that I have mixed on my palette at this stage, and I'm not being too fussy about the colours that I use. I'm just copying off my reference photograph. By the way, the line drawing and the reference photograph for this tutorial will be put in the Facebook group, The Wonders of Watercolour, and once again I will put all the details on the description box below. Painting this dessert is making me feel really hungry. Do you have a favourite dessert? If you do, let me know, drop it in the comments. While I have your attention, if you are enjoying this video, do subscribe to my channel and hit that like button. It really does help to support me. Now that these washes are dry, I felt that the base of the trifle needed a bit more colour and a bit more shade. I can see that I've missed a little bit here, and it looked like the jar was floating a little bit. I mixed Paynes Grey and I'm applying it as shown, blending it into the existing washes with my number 6 size spotter brush. Also applying a little bit of cherry underneath. You can see how this really makes it look as if it's jumping off the page and gives it a proper sense of realism. Again, blending it in with my brush. Just adding a tiny bit of Paynes Grey to the folds within the cream to give it a bit more form. Once again, adding Piemonte Genuine to the burnt umber and burnt sienna mixes to enhance some of the chocolate as I'm showing you here. Using the tip of my brush to get right into the corners to give it a sense of realism, to make it look really sharp. Burnt sienna and Indian yellow in this mix, and this will be used to enhance the side of the glass, as you can see. The paint has to be dry before you can do this, but it's very easy to blend in, and you can see me avoiding the bottom of the glass where it's reflecting off the base. Once again, blending it in as shown. I'm just using a damp brush to do this. It's really important that you blend the colours together. Picking up the same colour, this time with my number 0 size spotter, and blending it as shown, just to enhance the area around the cream where it hits the jar, where the caramel sauce dribbles down the side of the jar. If you like painting close-up work and you're enjoying this tutorial, you may also want to visit my Patreon school, where I have a botanical art tutorial site, and if you like painting in this method, you can use it to paint flowers as well. Once again, I will put the description in the description box below and links to all the products used here. I'm using a watery mix of Indian yellow along with burnt umber to paint in this little drizzle. And I'm working around this little highlight here, just to give it a sense of realism. I'm also painting at the side, as you can see, and dropping in a slightly darker colour on the bottom. The colour mustn't look flat, it must look organic and real. By having a flat colour, it just doesn't look right. And you can see me here adding a tiny bit of the darker tone just to make that drizzle stand away from the glass. Once again, dipping between the two colours as I feel necessary, and enhancing the darker colours as shown with my number 0 size spotter. I'm adding a bit of Paynes Grey to the mix to add to the darker areas of the jar, as you can see. Just continuing to blend in the colour with my number 2 size spotter here. I'm also using the residual paint on the brush to enhance the areas, as you can see. Also using the Paynes Grey mix underneath the glass just to make it really, really sharp. And the same for the cherry. Once again, blending into the existing washes. Back to Cadmium Scarlet to enhance the little cherry. And Indian yellow, and burnt sienna once again, enhancing the caramel on the top. Here you can see me using a wiggle in motion to apply Piemonte Genuine just to give a stippled effect on the dripping caramel at the side. Just sharpening up the bottom once again. I'm just using the residual paint on the brush to enhance the features, as you can see. Also working once more on the outside of this caramel drip to make it stand away from the paper. This makes it look three-dimensional. The method of painting that I'm using today is primarily wet on dry with a little bit of wet on wet or wet in wet. I find it gives full control if you work wet on dry, and it just makes the application process a whole lot easier. I'm using the burnt sienna mix to just sharpen up some of the areas on the caramel, as you can see. Once again, blending them into the dry wash that is there already. Piemonte Genuine just to enhance the glass. And just continuing this process. The important thing is that you have all your tonal values within your painting. The midtones are just as important as the light tones and the darker values. It's not just all about colour with watercolour, or indeed any painting, it's just making sure that you have the dimension as well as the colour. Adding a tiny bit more Paynes Grey to the base where the shadow is. And as always, blending that out with a damp brush. I'm using my number 6 for this. I find that it just gives a really lovely blurred effect. If you are joining in with this tutorial, use whatever brushes you feel comfortable with and the nearest colours that you have. Just adding a little bit more of the caramel colour, as you can see, and a bit of Piemonte Genuine mixed with a watery mix of Paynes Grey to enhance the highlight on the glass, just working around it with a very weak wash. This makes it jump off the page and makes it stand out a little bit more. I'm using my number 2 size flat brush here because I did make a little bit of a mistake where the cream hits the caramel. I'm just lifting it out, waiting for it to dry and then painting around it. I'm just continuing to paint in these little details here and there as I feel it is needed, until the painting is complete. If you've enjoyed this video, then you may want to have a look at this tutorial that's on your screen right now, where I show you how to paint this leaf in watercolour using a very similar technique. So click through and I'll see you there. Thank you very much for watching, and remember to give this video a thumbs up if you like it.